Good evening, participants. This is CS Anand Kankani from Mumbai, and I will be the presenter for this Learn, Create, Help session. This is our third session, and in today's session, we have CS Vishal Arora, a practicing company secretary from Delhi, with us, and he is going to share his insight on the related party transaction. So, before I just introduced Vishal sir, a small request to everyone that please keep your mic turned off and show your camera because it may result in buffering. So if you keep your cameras off and if you keep your mic off, that would be good. The session would go uninterrupted. Apart from that, the session is for 1 hour and it is being divided into 45 minutes for the session which sir is going to take, and 15 minutes followed by the question answer session which we have received on the basis of the Google form which you all have filled. So just to give a brief idea about the audience that we are here, the participants, we have a mix of students as well as qualified professionals here. We have lawyers, we have company secretaries, we have qualified chartered accountants in the session, as well as students who are pursuing CS executive, CS professional, CA final, as well as law and LLM. So Vishal sir is a fellow member of Institute of Company Secretaries of India. He is also a law graduate. He is a practicing company secretary from last 14 years, rather more than 14 years, and his area of practice specializes in the corporate law. He is partner at Legum Amicus in Delhi, and he is also actively associated with the NIRC of ICSI as a visiting faculty for CS students, teaching subjects like company law, drafting, and basically the subjects which he practices in. He's also a trainer at the Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs, which is established by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs on corporate laws to the probationary officers of ICLS Academy and the STAs of ROC as well as the official liquidator. So without taking much time, Vishal sir, you can start with your session.
So very good evening. Thanks to Anand for organizing this kind of session so that we can interact with the that professionals from various fraternity on a very much interesting topic related to related party transaction. So without wasting much time, so let's start this the presentation on related party transaction, because we have kept it for related party transaction under the Companies Act 2013. But rather, I would touch a little bit of SEBI LODR related to the definitions of related party and transactions, and the definition of related party and the transaction. Those are covered under Accounting Standard 18. Right? So let me share the screen. Right? So this is related party transaction. Related party transaction, that we need to understand two things here. One is what is related party and what is a related party transaction. So these two things that has to be understood. What do we mean by the related party? That is with whom the transaction will be will be done by the company, and what are the transaction under the Companies Act that would be covered under the related party. Because there's a variation under 188. If we compare section 188 with the Accounting Standard AS 18, so there is a difference in the transaction. Companies Act section 188 talks about very few items that would be covered under the related party transaction, whereas if we see Accounting Standard 18, that covers more than those transactions which are covered in section 188. Related party transaction are those transactions that a company undertakes with a party related to it. The term related party is very well defined under section 2 clause 76 of the Companies Act, which we will do. And the related party, the reason the why related party transaction concept is there. If anyone who has read Companies Act 1956, in the 1956 there was no such concept of related party, though there was a concept of section 297 where we used to take the approval of getting certain transaction done with the related party. But under section 188, it was clearly mentioned, it was clearly defined under this Companies Act 2013, which clearly mentioned about related party and the transaction which would be covered under section 188. So the reason behind is just to take just to avoid, just to take some precautionary measures by the company to do certain transaction with the related party, just to give them a favor. As we know, the basic concept of related party transaction means what? That means the directors of the company are doing certain transaction with their relatives, or may with the entities in which they have interest, so that they can give benefit to each other, right, at the cost of the other stakeholders. The other stakeholders maybe who are not related to them, maybe who are an outsiders who have invested money in the company, but they are not related to the management. So at the cost, or maybe at the interest of the other stakeholder, directors generally they take advantage of their position by doing certain transaction with the related party. So the intention behind was section 188, just to control those transactions. Let me give you a certain brief before we move. Initially, in 1956 Act, there was the concept of taking approval of the central government. The power was delegated to regional director at that time. But section 188, which was introduced in 2013 Act, the concept was to liberalize those transactions on the basis of certain declarations and certain basic approvals from the shareholders. So now a company can do related party transaction with the related parties without the intervention of the government, just by taking approval from the owners of the company. Owners, that means shareholder. Even to get it to get it more liberalized, what government did initially, it was approval which was required from the shareholders by the special resolution, but later on it was changed to an ordinary resolution. So now look at the intention of the government. Now government wants nowadays everything should be on the basis of self compliance. So self-compliance orientation that should be taken by the company nowadays. You declare it and you take it. You declare it and fulfill the certain formalities that may be related to the approval of board, or maybe related to the approval of the shareholders. Just on that basis, you can do the related party transaction. So first we need to understand here, related party transactions are not at all prohibited under the Companies Act, even not as per accounting standards. It's just that certain disclosures that company is required to make whenever company does any kind of transaction with the related party. Even if you look at the accounting standard 18 language, it says the disclosures to be made related to the related party transaction. It never says, it never prohibits any kind of related party transaction. So intention is only this, the director should not take any undue advantage of their position to give benefit to their related parties at the cost of the interest of the other stakeholders. Right, just to get the, as I said, therefore, in order to ensure the transparency, the law requires certain compliances to be made by the company which executes a related party transaction. Now, who are the related parties? So mainly there are two things that we need to understand here. One is, what do you mean by related party? The number two, what are the transactions that would be covered under section 188? If we can understand these two things very clearly, then the rest, the other things that will be, that are the formalities, how to comply with the section 188. But one thing or two things that has to be understood very clearly, what are the related party? As the name indicates, so we can easily, without referring to section 276 or SEBI LODR or accounting standards 18, so without referring to, by the name, in the name we can easily understand what do you mean by related party. Those parties which are related to the management of the company, directly or indirectly. But law has again specifically cleared it. As per section 2 clause 76, it says, with reference to a company, that company means what? That company which is going to do that transaction. Number one, director or his relative. Relative, again, it is very well defined under section 2 clause 77 only. Definition of relative is very much clear in this Companies Act as well as accounting standard 18. KMP or his relative. KMP, that we know, again, it's defined under the Companies Act, where we can say now company secretaries are also included. So the managing director, whole-time director, manager, CFO, CEO, and the company secretary is also under the definition of KMP. Firm in which director, manager, or his relative is a partner. right? Director, manager, or his relative is a partner. Now see, look at the intention of the law. What they are saying, directly or even not indirectly, you should do any transaction with the party, even though the director or manager is not a partner of firm. So let's say, so my company is going to execute a transaction, let's say for the purpose of sale and purchase of goods, right? So my company is ABC Limited, whatever, or ABC Private Limited is going to execute a transaction for selling of goods with a firm in which director of a company is not a partner, manager of your company is not a partner, but relative of the director or manager is a partner in that firm with which the company is going to do the transaction, right? Now see, indirectly benefit, so intention is to take that, just to restrict though that indirect benefit as well. So director is not going to take any direct benefit out of it. Well, definitely director is not a partner of that firm, his relative is a partner, so law says indirectly you will get benefit out of it. So there may be a planning. So intention is, even my that firm or my relative has nothing to do with that transaction, but just to take benefit of that indirectly, I have manipulated this kind of transaction from the company to that firm in which my relative is a partner. So this is the intention of the law, to cover even those kind of transactions as well. Even a private company in which director is a director, manager, or his relative is a member or director, right? Again, with any private company. So now be very specific, just read word to word. Private company, we are not talking about public company here. So we are saying only we are talking about private company in which a director or manager or his relative is a member or director. And make sure here we are not talking about what kind of percentage that relative or maybe the manager of your company or director of your company, that means I'm talking about the company which is going to do the transaction. So I'm not talking about how much percentage your director, your manager, or your relative, or maybe relative of either, are going to have in that private company. So I'm not talking about any kind of percentage. Law doesn't say anything. It says if in a private company in which you are going to do a transaction, right? If your director or maybe your manager or maybe relative is a member, irrespective of the shareholding they have, or maybe director of that private company, that is also a related party. So that private company shall also be a related party. Or a public company in which a director or manager or director is a director, and so see, I have underlined the word and holds along with his relative more than 2% of its paid up share capital, paid up share capital of that public company with which you're going to do the transaction, right? So if you're a director of a public company or manager of that public company, sorry, director or manager of a company which is going to do a transaction with a public company, so you are a director there and you hold more than 2% of paid up capital. So now intention is very clear. So that means if in a private company you're holding even a single share, right? Private company means the other company with which you're going to do the transaction. If you're holding a single share in that private company, you are considered as a related party. That private company is considered as a related party. But if your company, so make sure whenever in my whole presentation, so whenever I'm representing or I'm denoting the word your company, so your company means I'm talking about that company which is going to do the transaction, related party transaction, right? So now if your company is going to do a transaction with a public company, right, in which director or manager of your company, right, is a director and holds 2% or more of its paid up capital. That means if the director or manager of your company is holding less than 2% in that public company, so you're not a related party. The reason is very simple, because private company is always considered as a closely held company, right? Whereas if we talk about a public limited company which has lot of compliances to be comply in that public company, right? So in that case, law says if you are doing any, or if you are doing any favor to the public company in which you are holding a very minimum shareholding, which is the criteria is fixed less than 2%. So that means you have not much control in that public company. You are not even a director of that public company. If you're a director but you're not holding any share capital in that public company, right? If your control is very less, right, and if you are not controlling even any share, so that means you are not gonna take benefit out of that transaction. So intention is very clear, the director should not take any undue advantage of that transaction. So make sure in a private and public company what is the criteria, so that has to be seen very carefully, right? Any body corporate whose board of directors or managing directors or manager is accustomed to act according to the direction of the director or manager of your company. That means any body corporate whose board of directors, so that means if your company is going to do a transaction with a company whose board of directors are under your control, that may be because of whatever the reason you have, that may be by an agreement or maybe some business transaction, right? The point is the board of director of the other company with which your company is going to do the transaction, that board of directors or managing director or manager of that company are under your control, under the control of your director, under the control of director of your company. So that means whatever the transaction your company will do with the body corporate, that will be under your control indirectly. And make sure here we are using the word body corporate. So in the company law, we have to be very sure about the word company and the body corporate. Right? In the last 2 points, we were talking about a private company and a public company. Now here we are talking about the word body corporate. So by mentioning the word body corporate, which clearly says, which includes company and which includes anything and company which is under the special act of parliament, right? So and maybe a foreign company or the term body corporate, whatever the companies or corporates that are included in the term body corporate. Even body corporate is very well defined under the Companies Act as well, right? Any person whose advice or direction or instruction a director or a manager is accustomed to act. So that means now on the reversal side, now your company is going to do a transaction with a person on whose advice the director of your company are accustomed to act. Now your directors are under the control of a person, and with that person, that company is going to do the transaction. And make sure in these 2 points, any person who gives professional advice to the company, right? So being a professional, as we all are professionals, and we know being professionals, so we need to give a lot of advice to our clients. Generally, being a company secretary in practice, so I give a lot of advice to my clients, right? So now that does not mean that board of directors of that company are accustomed to act according to my directions, because I am a consultant to them. So that does not mean that I am a deemed director on the board of their company. That does not mean that I will be a related party, because that is my profession. So whatever the advice I'm giving to them, that is because of my professional nature, that is because of my professional capacity. So make sure that will not be included in that case. Right? So this concept is also comes when we talk about the deemed director concept. So what is a deemed director? So any person who acts in a professional capacity is not included in the deemed director concept as well. And any body corporate which is a holding company, subsidiary company, associate company of such company, they have included holding, subsidiary, associate company, and we know the definition of subsidiary company: holding more than 50% that voting power, associate which is holding more than 20%. So that is again definitions given. Subsidiary of a holding company to which it is also a subsidiary. Now subsidiary of a holding company to which it is also a to which it is also a subsidiary company. That is like your sister concern. So I'm A is a holding of B and A is holding of C. So B and C both are related to each other because both are their sister concern. So generally, if I say if holding company is a father, then father has one son, name of S1, and the father has another son or maybe a daughter in the name of S2. So S1 and S2. So both are related to each other because they are the subsidiaries of a one common holding company. Or an investing company or the venture of the company, so which is clearly venture of the company, which is clearly defined. What is by investing company and venture company means a body corporate whose investment in company would result. So that any company or maybe body corporate which is going to invest in your company, by the result that company, your company will become associate of that body corporate. So even they have included that. That means if you're going to do a transaction with a venturer who is going to invest in your company, as a result your company will become associate company of that body corporate. So now they have also included. So as per law they have tried, so as per the act even they have tried to cover a lot of the parties under the ambit of related party definition, though they have simplified the procedure, to do related party transaction, right? Director other than independent director, this was again introduced later on somewhere in 2014 only. The director or KMP of holding company or his relative shall also be deemed to be a related party, right? So make sure whenever, generally know what do we do. So whenever we come across with any the concept of related party in our practical life, whenever we need to give advice to our client whether it would be a related party transaction or not, so we have to read word by word to understand what exactly the transaction says, what exactly the related party definition says. Only then we should advise whether it would be covered under 188 or not. Now see what it is saying. So it's saying director or KMP of holding company and his relative or his relative will also be deemed to be a related party. So it does not talk about director or KMP of subsidiary company, right? But they're talking about director and KMP of holding company, right? So why? Because reason is very simple. Holding company always have a control over the subsidiary company. Holding company, if holding wants to get something done, maybe any transaction with the subsidiary company or maybe the relative or maybe any transaction of a subsidiary company which is being done with the director of a holding company, so holding company always have a control, the transaction can easily be done, right? That's why this is the reason, that's why they have covered the director or KMP of the holding company will also be a related party, because whenever subsidiary company will do any transaction, that will be done under the direction and control of holding company only, because holding company is a company which is controlling the subsidiary company. So any transaction that would be done by the subsidiary company, right, with the director of the holding company, so they have also covered it, because the reason is simple, because the holding company has a control over the subsidiary company, so no one is going to stop the holding company to do that transaction. But law has clearly mentioned ki yes, that would be related party. And make sure, as I mentioned earlier, just to understand the related party and related party transaction, law never prohibits, law never says you can't do that. Law says yes, you can do it, but certain compliances are there. Now relative under section 2 clause 77 clearly defined the member of HUF, spouse. They have not mentioned the word spouse, but husband or wife. And one person is related to such in manner as may be prescribed. So where they have prescribed under the rule 4. Right? There are only 8 categories that are covered under the definition of relative: father, mother, son, daughter. Right? Just too easy to understand. It's a very close family. Father, mother, son, daughter. Then accordingly, son, wife or daughter, husband, then brother and sister. Right? And it's very old thing now, because 2013 Act came. It's more than I would say 7 years now, right? So if we talk about 1956 Act, there were 22 categories that was defined in 1956 Act. A lot of categories were defined, right? Father's father, mother's father, father's mother, father's mother's father. So lot of things was a lot of categories were that were included in that. But in 2013 Act, they have made it very simple. Only the close relative would be covered under the ambit of related party. Only the 8 categories: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, along with spouse and the member of HUF. As per LODR 2015, again it is defined under LODR as a related party. It simply says related party, same which is defined under section 2 clause 76 of the Companies Act and as per the applicable accounting standard, right? So we have AS 18 as well, which I will cover, but you can also go through with the IND AS 24, which also talks about related party or related party transactions disclosures, right? Provided that any person or entity belonging to a promoter or promoter group of a listed company and holding 20% or more shareholding in the listed entity shall be deemed to be a related party. Any person or any entity. Now, where we talk about the person, it says any person. It may be an individual or maybe a non-individual, because they've also covered the word entity. So that means if any individual, any person, maybe artificial or natural, or maybe any entity belonging to the promoter or promoter group. So now again, if that means if it does not belong to the promoter or promoter group, again, if your entity is holding more than 20%, but in any case, if it will not be covered here, so that will be covered in the associate, right? Now see what SEBI LODR says any entity belonging to the promoter or promoter group and holding 20% or more shareholding, related party, right? So that means if it is considered as a related party, but that indirectly again covered as per the Companies Act as an associate company. So indirect impact again, even if it is exempted here, had it been exempted here, so it would be covered in the Companies Act 2013. So again, it's an associate company. So again, it is covered, because that's the thing, because they have specifically mentioned it 20% or more, but again they are also saying the related party under section 2 clause 76. So associate companies in any case is there. Now as per accounting standard 18, right, it talks about what it says: enterprises that directly or indirectly through or more intermediaries control or are controlled by or under the common control. Basically they're emphasizing on the word control. We'll see the definition of control as well. Associate and JV, joint ventures of the reporting enterprise. Reporting enterprises means why they're using the word reporting enterprises, because AS talks about disclosures by the reporting company. So disclosures have to be made. Joint ventures of the reporting enterprises, investing party or a venturer in respect of which reporting enterprises an associate or joint venture. Again, they're talking about associate and joint venture. Individual owing directly or indirectly an interest in the voting power of the reporting enterprise that gives them control or significant influence. Control or significant influence over the enterprises. KMP and their relative, will not go into much detail of AS 18 definition, because they have also defined KMP as well. Enterprises over which any described in C and D able to exercise significant influence. So they have also given the definition of significant influence. So now if we talk about AS 18, AS 18 talks about two things. One is a control, another one is a significant influence. Control, again, they have defined the control. Control means what? Ownership, directly or indirectly, of more than half of the voting power of an enterprise, because if you are controlling more than half, so that is your ownership. Control of control the composition of board of directors in case of a company, or a composition of a corresponding governing body in case of other enterprises, like any body corporate, right? So that means if you're controlling the composition of board of directors, so that is your control. You have control in that company, in that reporting company. So this is what the control, if you look at the definition of control under the Companies Act, so somewhere it is similar to that. Substantial interest in the voting power and the power to direct by any statute or agreement the financial or operating policy. So that means where you have to control the major under the control over the business management, yeah, business taking that decision, business taking policies. So that means if you have a control or voting power in the business taking policies of the company, so in that case again you have a control in that reporting company. Significance influence, same. If you see what control says, that financial and reporting policies of the enterprises, same it says participation in the financial and or it may be a financial or maybe the operating policy decision of an enterprises. So why it is mentioned and oblique or, so it may be either, it may be a financial policy decision, it may be operating policy decision, or it may be a both, right? So that's why they mention and or. If I'm having a financial, that participation in the financial operating policy, or sorry, financial policy decision making, or maybe the operating policy decision making of an enterprise, so I am covered. So that means I have a significant influence in your company. So generally, if an investing party hold 20% or more voting power, it is presumed that party has a significance influence. So it's like same the thing that basically that what accounting standard says, what companies act says, right? So more or less, if we say the definition of related party, if we talk about that goes with the control and significance influence, or maybe related which are in relation to related to each other. So these are the basically the concept of understanding the meaning of related party. So now after that understanding the related party, so let's move to the transaction. Those are covered under 188. Very simple, and how to understand it and how to remember those transactions is very simple. Just remember 6 things: sale and purchase of sale sale and right, sale and purchase of goods and materials, right? Selling or otherwise disposing of, buying of property of any kind. So now we're talking about goods, material, property, availing and rendering of any services, right? Then such related parties appointment in place of profit and appointment of underwriters. The 6, and I'm talking about Companies Act only. So I'm not talking about AS 18, what AS 18 says, right? Not even SEBI LODR. So because today our session is only to restrict to ourselves only to Companies Act, but though I will touch upon LODR and as well as AS 18, not a just a little bit, just to make you understand the difference, right? So now 6 things you have to take care of in 188: goods, material, services. Goods, materials, for those, even for those students basically who sometimes face difficulty, sir, how to understand what kind of transaction, that will be covered in 188. So I'll say just understand or just try to learn this: goods, material, services. So basically these are the things in which the company generally deals. Basically, if we talk about the business of a company, either it will be a service industry, or it will be a trading industry, right? Manufacturing or trading industries. So if we talk about manufacturing or trading industry, it says goods or material, right? Then if it's a service industry, like if I'm a professional, so I'm a company secretary in practice, or maybe a consultant, so I'm into service industry. So goods, material, services. These 3 things. Then after that, property. That the property is also included, even it was not there in 1956 Act. Properties is the transaction related to the buying and selling or leasing of property is also included in 188. Property, any transaction related to property. Then appointment of a related party to place of profit and underwriter. Appointment of the related party as an underwriter. Right? So now goods, material, services, property, place of profit, and underwriting. So if you come across any of these transactions with a related party, that will be termed as related party transaction. And make sure any transaction with the related party, see, under the Companies Act, so any transaction with the related party cannot be considered as a related party transaction. Getting my point? Any transaction with a related party cannot be considered as a related party transaction, but any related party transaction with a related party is always a related party transaction. That means any transaction with the related party under section 188, which is not covered in these transactions, right? Let's talk about providing a loan to the director, right? Or giving a loan to the company by director, giving a salary or remuneration to the director under section 188, that is not a related party transaction. Because generally sometimes student ask me, sir, my company is giving a loan to a director, or my company is getting a loan from a director, right? Or maybe other transaction. So right, so whether it would be, or my company is giving an interest to the director on that loan, so whether it would be a related party transaction, then I generally ask whether you're asking whether you're talking about Companies Act or you're talking about, sorry, AS18, right? But if you're talking about Companies Act section 188, you have to restrict yourself in these 6 category only. You are not supposed to see beyond this, right? So giving a loan to a director, that is a related party. That means that is a transaction with the related party. So can we say it's a related party transaction? Absolutely not, if we see section 188. So this is what I said. So it's maybe a confusing term, which that confusing line which I've used. Any transaction with the related party cannot be treated as a related party transaction. So we have to see the transaction, right? So as I gave an example, any loan or maybe any interest transaction with a related party with a director is not a related party transaction. So we have to see with the goods, material, services, property, either directly or maybe through an agent. In the agent, they cover for the purchase sale of goods, material, services, property, right? Availing of any or leasing of property of any, even not only buying and selling, even leasing of any property directly or through an agent, buying goods directly or through an agent, selling the goods or material directly or through an agent, providing, rendering the services or taking the services directly or through an agent. Again, that is a covered. That means if your director is a sole selling agent, if your director is an agent and getting orders for the company, again is a related party, that would be covered here in the related party transaction, right? And so after this, the 5th point is such related party appointment to place of profit. So this is the underwriting is simple. So I'll take that 1 or 2 minutes on place of profit. See, place of profit, as a name indicates, that person, the related party has, right, some profit sharing in the company. The related party has some place in the profits of the company. How it can be considered, how we can say having a place of profit in a company? Okay, let me explain here. So maybe I skip that to mention here. It would be there. Okay, so a place of profit means what? It says if director of a company, right, if director of a company getting remuneration from the company as director's remuneration, as a managerial remuneration, that is his right. If there's an agreement between company and the director, so director can get the remuneration. That means that is not place of profit, and that's not a related party transaction under section 188. But law says if director gets anything over and above the director's remuneration, over and above. So let's say I'm a director of a company, I'm taking a remuneration of 1 lakh or maybe 1 crore or maybe 5 lakhs per month. Apart from that, I'm an agent of the company, I'm getting a commission. I'm getting a commission. So whatever the remuneration I'm getting from the company, that is my right. So you can't take that right from me, because that is my remuneration. I'm providing services to the company. So I'm a director. But whatever I will get over and above the director's remuneration, over and above, so that will be a place of profit. And if is not a director, let's say any person, any related party, any related, other than director, any related party, if that related party takes anything from the company, right, that is place of profit, but by way of salary, fee, perquisites, commission, clearly defined. Anything from the company by way of salary, fee, perquisites, any rent-free accommodation, any commission from the company. Let's say, for example, if my brother is being appointed, I'm a director of the company, and your company is going to appoint a person as an accountant, as maybe a age, as maybe going to appoint as an agent, or maybe at a clerical level. So my brother is going to be appointed, and my brother, that means related party, related to me. So whatever remuneration he will take definitely salary, maybe as an accountant salary, or maybe as a peon salary, or maybe as an agent he will take commission. So that will be treated as place of profit. That will be treated as place of profit. But make sure, in any case, law is not denying anything you can't take. Law is not prohibiting or restricting anyone to do that. Law is simply saying to comply with the certain formalities, because it's a related party transaction. It should be transparent. It should be into the knowledge of shareholders and the directors, right? So that is basically what we call place of profit. Now, as per AS 18, what are the related party transaction? Same, which I discussed, but they're different few transaction. Financial transaction, including loan, equity contribution, cash or kind, guarantee or collateral, management contracts, including that for deputation of employees. Now, see, accounting standard definition is wider than the definition of Companies Act. Right? That's why whenever I talk about giving a loan to a director, or taking loan from a director, giving interest to the director, any financial transaction with the director is not covered in 188, but will be covered in AS 18. So in that case, in the financial statement, disclosures shall have to be made as per accounting standard 18. Right? As per LODR, it says related party transaction means transfer of resource, services, or obligations between a listed entity and a related party, regardless whether the price is charged, or a transaction with the related party shall be construed to include a single transaction or a group of transactions in a contract. Again, since it's a transfer resource or services or obligations between the listed entity and a related party, but they're saying regardless of the fact whether the price is charged or not. So they have mentioned one different line here. So regardless whether a price is charged or not, SEBI has nothing to do with the price is charged or not. But according to SEBI, that is a related party transaction. Right? So now, this is what we have understood, two things up to now: related party and related party transaction, keeping in mind the Companies Act section 188, keeping in mind the LODR, and keeping in mind the AS 18. Now, let's restrict ourselves to the Companies Act again. So if any related party transaction is going to happen in my company, especially if we talk about 188, only 6 transactions, 6 points that you have to kept in your mind. One is goods, materials, services, right? Property, office of place of profit, and underwriters, right? So there's 6 things you have to keep in your mind. So now, if you're going to do any transaction, law says you need to take the approval of board of directors. So without approval of board, you can't do any related party transaction. Because why specifically mention board approval? Because these are the transactions which is in the general nature, in the routine business of the company, in the ordinary course of business, I would say. For every buying and selling, board is not giving the approval. For every providing the services, the board is not giving the approval, because this is in the ordinary course of business. It's only if it is with the related party, then specifically board approval is required. And if company is going to do a transaction, depending upon how much capital the company has, or maybe a certain percentage, or maybe an amount of the transaction up to a limit, we need to take the prior approval of company by resolution. So earlier it was special resolution, but by the Companies Amendment Act 2015, it was deleted to the word resolution. That means special word was deleted from the section. Right? Now see how much they have liberalized it. So sometime, if we talk about 10 years back, in 1956 Act, they were talking about approval of the government up to a capital of, at that time, just don't remember it, I'm just sharing it with you. If at that time the paid-up capital was more than 1 crore, then approval of CG was required at that time. But in 2013, they have made it liberalized. First, they have reduced the definition of relative. They have reduced the categories of relative, right, and make it liberalized. And also, they are saying just take the approval of shareholders by special resolution. In 2015, again, they have liberalize it more by deleting the word special. Now an ordinary resolution would suffice, right? So where we need to take the approval of shareholders, again, now it is very simplified. Now just recently in 2019 only they have changed the rules and they have simplified the limit. Those who have studied earlier about the approval, the criteria for taking approval of the shareholders, so they must be knowing it. Now the criteria is very simple. Initially, though, they were covering, before that amendment, that they were covering 10% of turnover, net worth, or maybe a limit, or maybe an amount, 100 crores. There are different criteria. So now they have made it very simple. Now, if we talk about, now let's talk about the transaction again. Any sale and purchase of goods, material directly or through an agent, if the value exceed 10% or more of the turnover of the company, right? That means if it is up to the 10% of turnover of the company, less than 10%, so then no approval of shareholders is required, only board approval is required, right? Buying and selling of property of any kind, right? Directly or through an agent, right? We're talking about only goods, material, right? And we're talking about only property. 10% or more net worth. Now see, now you have to understand it. Somewhere they have mentioned the word turnover. Somewhere they have mentioned the word net worth. Why so? Because where we're talking about goods, material, and services, right? We're talking about goods, material, and services, which is a general routine nature of the business. So they're considering the turnover into account. But whenever you're talking about a property, buying and selling, which is a property, has nothing to do with the turnover of the company, right? They're talking about worth of the company. But in case of, again, leasing, they're talking about turnover, right? Explanation, it has been clarified that the transaction either individually or maybe taken together in the financial year. Turnover or net worth as per the last audited financial statement of the preceding financial year, whatever we have. So turnover and worth to be calculated according to that. Now, apart from that, what we are left with? Place of profit. That means if any related party is going to be appointed in a place of profit, right? If the person who is going to be appointed, like just I was giving an example, ki being a director of a company, other than over and above remuneration, as director, I am taking commission from the company. If my brother is being appointed in a company as an accountant, as on a clerical job, or maybe in any other capacity, if the monthly remuneration exceed rupees 2.5 lakhs, that means up to 2.5 lakhs per month. It says monthly, not annually. It's not annually, it's per month. Per month. Sometimes there may be a possibility, it happens in some cases where you are getting a remuneration of 2 lakhs, but at the end of the year, you're getting the bonus and the average salary that goes to more than 2.5 lakhs. No, it is not included there. It says per month you are getting a remuneration of more than 2.5 lakhs. Then approval of shareholders is required. And if it is below 2.5 lakhs or maybe up to 2.5 lakhs, nothing. Only shareholders approval is required. Only shareholders approval is required. I am repeating again, make sure beta in all cases, no restriction to the related party transaction. They are not prohibiting. If your brother is being appointed in a company and taking a remuneration of 1 crore per month, even it is not prohibited. Just approval of shareholders is required. That's it. And that too by an ordinary resolution. And as an underwriter, if remuneration exceed 1% of the net worth of the company. So now remember one thing, where they have used the word, where they are taking the criteria of turnover and where they are taking the criteria of net worth, right? And no member of a company shall vote on the resolution to approve the contract in which the member is a related party. That was for the first time under the Companies Act 2013. I would say, in other words, the concept of interested shareholder was introduced. We have always heard about interested director 184, but for the first time the interested shareholder was introduced, but not directly they're using the word interested shareholder, but in any case indirectly they mean the same. If any member is interested, is a related party with which the company is going to do the transaction, in that general meeting that member will not vote on such resolution, says shall not vote. But again the confusion arose in that case where what do we do with the private company, because in case of private company where directors are the same and the shareholders are same, so we'll discuss. So they exempted the private company from that that concept. In the case of private company, that means the shareholder can participate. In case company in which 90% or more members in number are relatives of the promoter or related party, then above restriction is not applicable. That's a very basic point, and easily and logical too, because if in your company 90% of the members are relative of promoter, are the related party, then obviously then how to take the decision in the company. Ultimately when board is interested, we go to the shareholder. So when shareholders are interested, then where should we go? We can't go to the tribunal every time to take the approval, right? So when board is interested, we go to the shareholders. When shareholders are interested, then it says if it is 90% or more members are interested, then obviously they are the person who are controlling the company. So they are the person who has a major share in the company. Let them do the transaction. That's it. Oh, so by somehow that slide is mentioned here, place of profit. So sincere apology, because it should have come at that definition of place of profit, but nothing to worry, it's still here. So that's good, it's here in the PPT. So office place of profit, it said if a director holds anything over and above the remuneration as director, over and above the director remuneration by way of salary, free, fee, commission, perquisites, any rent-free accommodation, and if it is being held by any individual other than director or by any related party, any firm, private company or body corporate, right? If that takes anything from the company, right? So as mentioned earlier, for director, whatever director's remuneration you take, that is fine. We have no issues in that. Being director, you can get the director's remuneration. That is not place of profit. But whatever you get over and above it, that is place of profit. Similarly, in case of any other person other than director, if they take anything, that means if my brother is going to be appointed on a remuneration of, let's say, 1,000 rupees per month, even then, it is a related party transaction. Board approval is required, right? Interested shareholder will not participate, that we have covered, but this will not apply to a private company. In 2015 the notification came, so say this provision shall not be applicable to a private company, because of the simple reason, even till that time, till 2015, we had a lot of dilemma how to do the transaction. In my private company there are two directors and the shareholders, so we are going to do the related party transaction above the limit, shareholders approval, but shareholders are also interested, so how to do that? So that ultimately government came with a rescue by giving that amendment. Now private companies, they're not supposed to follow this provision, even provided that nothing in the second provision shall apply to a company in which 90% of members. So that again we have already covered, that came in 2017. Right now, the requirement of passing the resolution mentioned above shall not applicable in case of a transaction between a holding company to its wholly owned subsidiary company. Only in case of wholly owned subsidiary company. Again, so if you are going to do a transaction with a wholly owned subsidiary company, so who is the shareholder of the wholly owned subsidiary company? But of course, the holding company. Again, it's a logical exemption that was given. Right? Again, it was mentioned in the notification that will not be applied to a private company as well. Sorry, government company as well, which was notified on 5th of June 2015, and latest again in 2020, 2nd of March, they have again changed the concept of in case of government company, how it applies. It says government company in respect of contracts or arrangement enter into with any other government company or with any central government or state government or any combination there. Right? A government company other than listed company in respect of contracts or arrangement other than those referred to above, in case such company obtains approval of that respective ministry or department, right? which is administratively in charge of that company. That means, so yeah, and if you know this kind of amendment in case of government company had that they were introduced in many section under the Companies Act. Wherever they talk about government company, the approval is not required. Where government company takes the respective approval of that particular department or ministry, which is the administratively in charge of that company. If you have taken the approval from the department, from that ministry, under which you are in whose control you that government company is being run, so in that case no further approval is required under the Companies Act. Audit committee, wherever it is applicable, the audit committee, it has to be approved by the audit committee only. So once it is approved by the audit committee, the board of directors will take care of that. And where any director is interested in a related party transaction, he shall not be present at the meeting. So that there, make sure, in case interested shareholder is concerned, law says interested shareholders shall not vote on that resolution, right? So it does not say ki interested shareholder will not participate, will not come to the meeting, will not vote, shall not vote, but he can come and attend the meeting. But if we talk about the interested directors, obviously in case of interested director, that we know interested director even cannot participate in that meeting, cannot be present, right? Every contract which is related to which is being done by the company under 188, that has to be mentioned in the board report with a complete detail, what kind of related party it is, what are the transaction, what is the value of transaction, with the complete justification ki why you're doing the transaction with the related party. Even in the explanatory statement, we have to give certain things to be mentioned to the shareholders before taking their approval. So once shareholder will come to know about these things, only then they would be able to give the approval. Okay, what is the name of related party, and what is that, who is a director who is related to that, nature of relationship, any monetary value, what is the monetary value of that contract, or any other information which you think that shareholders should know before giving the approval of related party. Exemption, where you are not supposed to take the approval of shareholders or even the board. That one we have already covered. Any transaction with the wholly owned subsidiary company. Now, any transaction at the arm's length basis, arm's length transaction in the ordinary course of business. Now we are going to spend 2 or 3 minutes on these two things. One is arm's length transaction, and which is in the ordinary course of business. Now what is arm's length transaction means? The transaction, if it is a transaction which is being done between two unrelated party, unrelated. See, what is the intention? As in my at the starting of my session, what I mentioned, what was the intention of the law to introduce the section 188 to control these related party transactions, because director or management or KMP should not take any undue advantage by giving favor to their related parties. Right? But if we are doing a related party transaction with a related party which is on arm's length basis, arm's length means at the same price, at the same manner, in the same criteria, which that transaction could be done with unrelated party. Right? That, let's say for example, if I am selling my product to my related party, let's say at X price, right? There may be a intention, there may be a mala fide intention of mine that the same price I can sell it to the unrelated party of 2,000 rupees, but I'm selling it to my related party of 1,000 rupees, right? So that's an undue advantage which I'm passing on to my related party, which I'm giving a favor to my related party by just giving a favor of selling the goods at a half of the price that is for the unrelated party. This is basically the intention of law. But if I can prove it, I am selling the goods to my related party of 1,000 rupees, and I'm selling the same to unrelated party at 1,000 rupees only, at arm's length basis. The law says that we have no issues. That means you're not doing any undue advantage. You're not taking any undue advantage. You're not doing any undue favor to the related party. But make sure that transaction should be done in the same manner which you are doing to the unrelated party. In the same manner, why I'm using the word same manner? Because I'm not talking about, law doesn't want, law is not talking about price only. No, price only. Just think about it. my company's policy is to sell the goods on credit, maximum of 1 month credit, right? So now what my company is doing, my company is doing a transaction with a related party at the same price, which is for the unrelated party, let's say 1,000 rupees, same price, no issue. But as far as credit is concerned, so I'm giving a credit to the related party of 6 months, but to the unrelated party, the credit is of 1 month. So again, it's not arm's length basis, it's an undue advantage, it's an undue favor which I'm giving to the related party. So we have to visualize, we have to very carefully see the arm's length transaction, right? So why I'm clarifying it, because it's not related to the price, it's related to the price as well as it is related to the any terms and conditions which are attached to that transaction with the unrelated party, right? So then if it is arm's length, if it is on arm's length basis, the law is satisfied, nothing to be done, relax. So that means no need to take the approval, but make sure that transaction should be in the ordinary course of business. Ordinary course of business is not at all defined under the act, right? It's not defined under the act. It simply says it is in the normal course of business for the promoting or furtherance of the company's business objective as per the chartered document. Generally, we say MOA. That means the transaction which is covered in memorandum of association of a company. So we can say, apparently we can say is in the ordinary course of business. So why I'm using the word apparently? Because in many cases it was also decided, it has also been decided that even though the transaction which is covered in the MOA, right, but company is not frequently doing that transaction. On let's say on the other side, if my company, the company is doing a transaction which is not covered in MOA, which is not there in memorandum of association of a company, but company frequently does that transaction. Frequently. So now we have to see memorandum as well. So we have to see those transactions which are frequently being done by the company. That means if a transaction, now if I ask you guys a question, if a company does a transaction with a related party which is frequently transaction but not covered in MOA, right? So can we say it is in the ordinary course of business? So I repeat once again, so what I'm asking, so what I'm saying, the company is doing a transaction, right, which is not in the memorandum of association of a company, in the charter of the company, but company frequently does these kind of transaction, right? So can we say it's in the ordinary course of business? Absolutely yes, we can say. So why I'm saying so, that every time we cannot say that this is not covered in memorandum, but company is doing frequently that transaction, but that does not mean that it's not an ordinary course of business. That will be an ordinary course of business. Like for example, in case of manufacturing company, purchase and sale of goods, taking premises on lease or rent for the factory purpose, employing workers, etc., will be considered as an ordinary course of business. To carry on the business, several activities are carried on by the company. All activities will be covered under the ordinary course of business. However, if a manufacturing company, for the purpose of its diversification, decides to acquire another company which is engaged in the completely unrelated business, will not be considered as the transaction in the ordinary course. Similarly, in the case of Mrs. Bharti Televentures Limited versus Additional Joint Commissioner of Income Tax, it says it was held memorandum and article of association is not conclusive evidence for deciding whether the activity is in the ordinary course of business or not. Frequency of the activity is sought to be highlighted. It should be a continuous activity carried out in a normal, organized manner, even though it is not covered in MOA. So MOA definitely is a evidence that company is doing that activity, but it is not a conclusive thing to say. So that we cannot say the transaction which is frequently being done by the company is ordinary course of business or not. Right? Even again, another case, it was decided that the amount lent by company to a third party will not be a ordinary course of business unless you are into finance business. Again, unless you are into finance business, right? The court observed that just because an activity including the memorandum of association does not become an activity in the ordinary course of business. Now, so I have so we have discussed two different cases here. One case where it is not mentioned in the memorandum, but company frequently does that activity. The other is it is covered in memorandum, financing business, but company is doing it, but that's not an ordinary course of business. So the point is, ordinary course of business, that's why I'm saying the ordinary course of business is not defined. It depends on case to case what kind of activity company is doing. So in simple word, you can say if company is frequently doing that transaction, it's an ordinary course of business. That's it. Penal consequences. A simple says that any contract or maybe any contract which is being done by the company without the approval of board or the maybe shareholders, that has to be ratified within 3 months. And if it is not ratified, that it will be voidable at the option of the board or the shareholders. So I'm sure you must be knowing what is a voidable contract. So where it can be avoided by either party whose consent was not free. Right, so that means we did not take the approval of shareholders or board. If it is not ratified even within 3 months, then it is up to the shareholders or maybe board of directors to cancel that contract. In that case, the director who was involved in that transaction shall indemnify the company. Right, so I'll not take much time. It's a very simple thing. It shall be open to the company to proceed against the director or any other employee of the company who was involved in 188. And if we talk about 188, it talks about vacation of office as well. If you know something about vacation of office of a director, in case of, if there is a violation of section 188, see, even office of a director can also be vacated. Then again, certain penalties there which is defined in this. Right, last but not the least, so Anand, I will take I think more 5 or 7 minutes so to discuss this omnibus approval. So can I continue with that?
Absolutely,
Because
sir. Your session is
absolutely,
sir. Your session is so insightful. The entire audience is intact here. So for sure, sir, you can continue.
Thank you. So now, last but not the least, just to reduce the, I would say, why omnibus approval was introduced of the audit committee. You know, what was the purpose? So, in my language, generally, I say just to reduce the burden of the directors or maybe the shareholders every time, because these are the transactions which company can do maybe regularly. Right, maybe not on arm's length basis, right, but transaction is of regular nature but not on arm's length basis. So now there may be a possibility, so every time board is to give the approval to the for that particular transaction, maybe we need to go to the shareholders every time. Just to save that time, the concept of omnibus approval was introduced, which says yes, audit committee, right, all related party transactions shall require approval of audit committee, and that audit committee may, not necessary, it's not necessary, may make an omnibus approval for the related party transaction. Right, may, right, it's not there. And obviously those companies which are not supposed to have the audit committee under section 177, and obviously that company is not required to go for this audit committee approval and omnibus approval, right? So now that means omnibus approval concept applies only in case of company which is supposed to have the audit committee. So that means the question that comes to my mind, in my company where audit committee concept is not required, audit committee is not required, so can board give the omnibus approval? Maybe let's say if audit committee is not, let the board give the omnibus approval. No, it's not. It's the power for this omnibus approval is given to the audit committee only. What omnibus approval says, it says approval in one go. Just like we can say it's like a blanket approval which is given to the director up to a certain limit. Just take an approval, right, with that related party. So whatever the transaction we do up to that amount or that limit, you just do it without further approval. Right, so it says omnibus approval shall contain the following: name of the related party, nature of duration of the transaction, maximum amount of transaction that can be entered, indicative base price or the current contracted price, or any other information relevant for the audit committee. So they will give a detailed approval. Criteria: the audit committee shall specify the following criteria, right? Maximum value of transaction in aggregate. So they can fix up a valuation, maximum value according to the nature of transaction, according to the past experiences of that transaction with the related party. maximum value per transaction in aggregate or per transaction that can be allowed, extent and manner of disclosure to be made to the audit committee at the time of seeking omnibus approval, review related party transaction entered into by the company pursuant to each omnibus approval. Just general thing, basically the criteria which an audit committee has to take care for giving the omnibus approval. Right? Repetitiveness of the transaction, whether keeping the past record, how much it should be given, and justification for the need of omnibus approval. So that means if the nature of the transaction, the transaction will be done a number of times, or maybe every month, or maybe every fortnightly, or every week, we have to do the transaction. So obviously there is a justified to give the omnibus approval, right? For unforeseen transaction, maybe those transactions which cannot be foreseen by the audit committee, which may come later on, so that they give a value where value cannot be determined, so they can fix the value maximum of 1 crore per transaction. So up to that you can just go ahead without the approval of the audit committee further, and make sure that approval of the audit committee by omnibus approval shall be valid for 1 financial year and shall require fresh approval after expiry of such financial year. Right? And most important, omnibus approval shall not be made for transaction in respect of selling and disposing of undertaking of the company. No, it is only for those transactions which are covered under 188 for selling or disposing of any undertaking of the company. And make sure even undertaking is very well defined under the Companies Act. So I'm not going to discuss here right now, but still it is again defined under the Companies Act very clearly. So for any disposing of or selling of any undertaking of a company, again omnibus approval shall not be applicable for that transactions, right, or any other conditions as audit committee may deems fit, right? So now what we have understood in today's session is we talked about related party transactions. So independently we discussed about, we make our understand about related party and related party transaction and the compliance part of the related party transaction. Right. So this is all from my side. I took a lot of time because, and really apology to everyone, and especially to Anand, because Anand at the beginning of the session mentioned it's going to be 45 minutes session for this presentation and 50 minutes for the queries. But generally it happens generally it happens with every faculty, or when you speak and you speak a lot. So we don't even realize what is the time. So it's being, I think, approximately more than 1 hour that I'm speaking. So thank you very much. Thanks for lending me your patient ear, that you're listening to me for last more than 1 hour. And I hope I've tried my level best to clear your doubts, or maybe there are questions. I would love to clarify those questions as well. Right. So over to Anand.
So even we didn't realize that it's 6:20. Your session was so insightful and grooming that we were all engaged to the session. Just a couple of questions which have been asked here is that what are the difference between, or is there any difference between the Ind AS and the Accounting Standard 18?
No, see, India is compliant, and if you say it's only, see, India and AS 18, they basically talks about disclosures to be made. So they have covered certain related parties and transactions that would be covered, and accordingly, like disclosures to be made in the financial statement. So right, so India and even AS 18, they don't talk about anything the approval basis. So approval is concept only of 188, right? So they talk about disclosures to be made in the financial statement. So unfortunately we have not covered the disclosure part of AS 18 and AS 24. So definitely if I'll discuss with Anand, or maybe in future we'll come out with the disclosure part of Ind AS and AS 18, how disclosure to be made and what is the comparison or difference between AS 18 and Ind AS 24.
Okay, and one more question which has been asked here, that what is the meaning of the property in section 188? So I think the question which Supriya is asking here, whether the movable property or it is exclusively for the immovable property, or both the property would be included in this.
Yes, exactly. Both the properties. If we talk about property, that would be covered everything. So it may be movable, immovable property, whatever. So that would be covered in whole. Because if nothing is specifically defined under the law, so we have to go with that that general definition of the property. So it covers everything.
Okay. So thank you. Okay, so there are some other questions. So can I take those questions here?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so it's another
Even
question.
we need one question, one more question before the presentation. Ki how
Mhm.
to determine the arm's length? How to basically justify ki whether the transaction is arm length basis or not, right? So the point is very clear. There is no criteria. There is no criteria under the law how to basically define whether the transaction is arm's length basis or not. The only way where we can say this transaction is an arm's length basis or not, just to take the certain quotation or something like that from the market, from the unrelated party. This is why I'm saying so, because this is what we do practically, right? So whenever we need to do any related party transaction, so whether it's arm's length or not, generally we take the quotations from the market from unrelated party with respect to the similar transaction, right? So only just to show to the maybe to the government, whenever it comes to their knowledge, ki yes, this is a transaction which you are doing the related party, and we have taken the similar quotation or similar thing with the unrelated. This is on the same footing. So if the same price I'm getting from the unrelated party and from my related party, then why not related party, right?
Okay.
Because the intention is I should not give any undue advantage of my position to the related party. That's it.
Okay. And there is this another question that if a prior approval is not taken for a related party transaction, I'm sure you addressed this, you had addressed this while talking about the approvals, that if a prior approval is not taken for a related party transaction, so can the approval be obtained after the transaction has been executed
Yes, it says within 3 months you have
within
to,
3 months?
it has to be notified. I mentioned earlier. Yes.
Okay, okay. So thank you so much, sir. You discussed the concept of the related party transaction, its evolution, how it was there, the definition of the related party, what it was there in the 1956 Act, and how the definition has got evolved and changed in the 2013 definition. Then you also discussed the transactions which would be considered as related party. You also touched upon the compliances and the exemptions which are there. You discussed AS 18. You also explained some of the terms like the place of profit, office of profit, arm's length, then the ordinary course of business. I'm very sure a lot of things which were, people were not sure of the things like arm's length or place of profit or the ordinary course of business. That is, I'm sure they must have got a clear understanding of it. Then you also discussed about the notification exemptions and also the judicial pronouncements, not just from the Companies Act in terms of the ROC, in terms of the NCLT or the High Court. You also got the judgment from ITAT. And I really thank you for this insightful session once again, sir, for taking out time and addressing to all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and we'll try to come with this with more sessions on various topics so that me and Anand Befili will try to share maximum we can.
Definitely. Of course, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you,
Thank you.
participants, for being there. Yes, I'll definitely will try to look for some more topics which we can do. So the group, WhatsApp group in which you all were sent the invite, I will share a Google form. Do fill that form. This would give us more insight about how we can proceed and plan for our next session. And thank you for being a wonderful audience. Thank you so much. Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you. Thank you. All the best. Bye.
Thank you.